Today, we're discussing the social learning theory and attachment theory. Social learning theory is one of the most influential in criminology because it explains crime as something that is learned through social interaction, much like any other behavior. It builds on Sutherland's differential association theory, adding more detail on the actual mechanisms of learning. So by the end of this short lecture, I hope you understand the major components of SLT, how it applies to different types of crime, and what its policy implications are. Let's start with the foundations. Akers extended Sutherland's differential association theory, which argued that criminal behavior is learned through communication and relationships. Social learning theory emphasizes that crime is not inherited or caused by biology alone. Instead, it is learned through interaction and communication with others, especially in close groups like with your peers and family. Now, this means that crime is not unique. It is learned in the same way we learn everyday behaviors. Now, let's go over the four core concepts of social learning theory. The first is differential association, and this refers to who we spend time with. The second is definitions, which are the attitudes or beliefs we hold about crime. The third is differential reinforcement, and this refers to the rewards and punishments that follow behavior. And the last one is imitation, and this is when we model or copy the behavior of others. Together, these four processes help explain how crime is initiated, maintained, and sometimes stopped. Differential association is one of the most important elements of the theory. The idea is that the groups we associate with, like our peers and family, provide the context in which we learn values and behaviors. If we are exposed to more pro-criminal attitudes than anti-criminal attitudes, then we are more likely to engage in crime. Now, four things matter here: the frequency of contact, how long the relationship lasts, how early in life it begins, and how important the relationship is to us. This helps explain why peer influence is so strong during adolescence. The next element is definitions. Now, definitions are basically our beliefs and rationalizations about crime. Some are general, like believing that laws are unfair in general. Others are specific, like thinking that stealing from a rich store is really not wrong. These definitions can neutralize guilt and justify behavior, so it makes it easier to commit crimes. For example, someone might say, well, everybody cheats on their taxes, or it's not really stealing if the company has insurance. These beliefs make crime seem acceptable or even normal. Now, let's look at differential reinforcement and imitation. Reinforcement refers to what happens after a behavior. If it is rewarded or goes unpunished, it's likely to continue. Rewards can be positive, like money or approval, or they can be negative, like avoiding punishment. Punishment can stop behavior, but research tells us that reinforcement is often stronger than punishment. Imitation means we copy the behaviors we observe, especially from people who are the most important to us. For example, a teenager may start drinking because they see their older sibling praised for it, or because their friends encourage it. Reinforcement keeps the behavior going. Now, let's consider applications and evidence. Social learning theory has been used to explain many types of crime, including juvenile delinquency, substance abuse, and even white-collar crime. For instance, delinquent peers strongly influence adolescent offending. Studies show that reinforcement from peers makes drug use more likely. So in corporate settings, unethical practices can be learned if coworkers or supervisors approve of them. Now, empirical evidence is strong for SLT. but some critics suggest it overlaps with other theories like control theory, and it can be difficult to measure precisely, especially when it comes to attitudes and reinforcement. So finally, about this theory, let's look at the policy implications. Social learning theory suggests that prevention and intervention programs should focus on changing social environments. Now, this might include providing pro-social mentors, restructuring peer groups, and rewarding lawful behavior. In corrections, cognitive behavioral programs that we have talked about before are effective because they teach new definitions and reinforcement patterns. Group therapy can help by addressing negative peer influence. Overall, SLT teaches us that changing environments, reinforcement systems, and beliefs can reduce both the onset and persistence of crime. So now that includes our talk on social learning theory. So now we're going to talk about the origins of attachment theory, really based on the work that you read in the module of John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. Bowlby was initially interested in how maternal loss or deprivation influenced later personality development, while Ainsworth, she studied security theory and the secure base concept. Now, their collaboration in the 1950s really laid the foundation for a theory that has shaped developmental psychology and continues today to guide research and practice. Bowlby trained as both a psychiatrist and a psychoanalyst, and his early work emphasized the harmful effects of maternal deprivation. He rejected the dominant clan views that problems stemmed only from internal fantasy, insisting instead that real family experiences had profound consequences. Now, drawing on ethology, control systems theory, and psychoanalysis, he began building attachment theory with concepts such as separation anxiety and grief in children. Mary Ainsworth, now she trained under William Blatz in security theory, and this emphasized the need for secure dependence before independence. She also conducted pioneering naturalistic observations in Uganda, where she identified early patterns of infant-mother attachment. Now, later in Baltimore, she developed rigorous home observations in the famous strange situation procedure. Ainsworth's work introduced the concept of the caregiver as a secure base for exploration and stressed the importance of maternal sensitivity. And I want you to take notice of the concept of the caregiver. Between 1958 and 1960, Bowlby presented a series of seminal papers. He wrote The Nature of the Child's Tie to His Mother, Separation Anxiety, and Grief and Mourning. These challenged the psychoanalytic orthodoxy by arguing that attachment is an instinctive adaptive system. It's not a secondary drive. Now, he described the phases of separation, protest, despair, and detachment, and also emphasized that infants experience grief and mourning when attachment figures are unavailable. And what's important here is the attachment figure doesn't necessarily have to be a biological parent or mother. It can be a strong caregiver and attachment figure that the child attaches to at birth. Ainsworth's Uganda study revealed differences in infant attachment patterns: secure, insecure, and not yet attached. In Baltimore, her observations highlighted the role of maternal sensitivity in shaping secure attachment. She later created the strange situation. Now, this is a lab procedure that classified attachment as secure, avoidant, or ambivalent. It was really based on reunion behaviors. Now, these findings validated Bowlby's ideas and provided an empirical foundation for attachment classifications. And one thing I want to point out that studying attachment theory is very difficult because we can't, in a lab environment, have children that have a positive caregiver to those that don't. That's unethical. So we can't, just separate a child at birth just for our research. So the only way to really study this is over a long term of going back and looking at long-term studies from a child that didn't have that attachment to a child that did. Now, Bowlby's trilogy was attachment, separation, and loss. He further developed the theory. He introduced the idea of internal working models of self and others and explained how early attachment experiences can shape our later expectations. He also influenced research on grief, mourning, and psychotherapy. He showed how attachment disruptions can affect the mental health. Later research expanded attachment theory beyond infancy. Mary Main developed the adult attachment interview, and this is linking parental attachment representations to infant attachment patterns. Attachment research also extended cross-culturally and into fields such as developmental psychopathology, exploring links between insecure attachment, depression, maltreatment, and later relational difficulties. And lastly, to conclude about attachment, Bowlby and Ainsworth attachment theory transformed our understanding of child development. Now, this is also what has been included within Hershey's and Gottfried's self-control theory. And it shows that secure emotional bonds are crucial for healthy development and disruptions that can have lifelong consequences. Today, attachment theory informs research, clinical practice, parenting programs, and our understanding of adult relationship. It remains a powerful framework for linking early caregiving to social and emotional outcomes across the lifespan. And again, as I mentioned, this is talked more, it's discussed more with the self-control theory and the social bonding and control theories that I talked about in the other lecture, that really connects to Hershey's social bonding theory as well as their Gottfried and Hershey's self-control theory.